Whenever you get serious about answering a big question like, what should I do with my life, you start digging. And you soon discover you're not the first person who thought about that question. Books have been written to answer that question. Some of the info you've heard before: find your passion, do what you're good at, meet a need. It's usually helpful. But when I looked at Shawn Askinosie's meaningful work, I found something unexpected. A not so average nugget of advice for finding and doing work that ultimately connects to your soul. So in this video, I want to cover this attorney turned chocolate maker's tips to discovering your personal purpose. Let's do this. Welcome to Total Calling, where we help you do what you were made to do. I'm Brandon Clay. Shawn Askinosie is a real-life Willy Wonka. He details what he did to find the purpose God had for him, and he drops chunks of chocolate-coated wisdom that can help you in your quest to find out what your calling is. Inside these 6 steps he gives, there's one step that comes out of left field. We'll get to that, but first, let's meet Shawn.
I was a criminal defense lawyer for nearly 20 years. I built my reputation defending people accused of murder and never losing a jury trial. Mine was the kind of work that incites death threats, and I have received many. But none of that really bothered me. I loved my work, despite the sadness surrounding much of it, until I didn't. One day I was in court on a routine matter and my chest started hurting. I didn't know what was happening. All I knew was I needed to see a doctor. Well, it turned out to be a panic attack, but I didn't know that then. My doctor wanted to put me in the hospital overnight to check my heart. Word of advice: if you're a lawyer and you tell your doctor your chest is hurting, you will end up in the hospital. Just saying. So it turned out my heart was fine, but he wanted me to see a psychologist, which I did, and I ended up on Lexapro.
You see, after a turning point as a lawyer, Shawn began the process of uncovering a deep-seated pain he had suppressed for decades. It was the pain of losing his father to cancer at the age of 14. Shawn's dad died right in front of him. We don't know the effects death will have on us when someone so close to us dies, especially at a young age. Fast forward many years later, Shawn just knew his days of being a lawyer were over after a difficult trial. He kept practicing law for several years while he unwound his practice to do something completely different. It's an interesting story, and if you want to know more, you can check out the TEDx talk in the description or just buy the book. But the point of this video is not so much Shawn's background as is to see what he did to find his calling and what he thought he should do with his life. Shawn tells the story somewhere of reading Poe Bronson's What Should I Do With My Life, thinking he would find the answer to his own personal path somewhere in a hidden chapter. He didn't. He even Googled the question looking for an answer. Maybe you've done that. He didn't find it in the search results either. Research is good. You'll learn more with a little research than you will by pondering, hoping, wishing for a better way or a purpose in life. Research can be super helpful. But I think Shawn's first step is a good reminder to anyone competent with a search box. Not everything you need to learn will be found on a search engine. For as much as we depend on Google for information, Amazon for books and anything else, or YouTube for entertainment, none of them are omniscient. Big tech doesn't know everything. Some things you only learn through other means. Step number 2 is about self-discovery. This is your standard fare in the find your calling space. It's good, if basic, but let's still review it. If you've lived and worked for a few years, especially if you have a work history that is diverse, you probably have a good idea of things that you're good at, things that are fun, things that are interesting. What are those things you can do, and what are those things you don't like to do? That's 2 circles of the Venn diagram that Askinosie is drawing. What about the 3rd circle? It's this: what does the world need? What are the world's needs that intersect with those other circles that could be fulfilled by your skills and your passions? You have the supply of abilities and drive. Now, what is the demand of the marketplace? If you want to boil down exactly what you should do with your life, it's in this diagram. Maybe not completely, because there's still a few other steps, but write down the 3 of these things: talents, passions, and what the world needs. Somewhere in the intersection of these items, you will find what you were made to do. But don't decide anything yet. There are still 4 steps to go. Here's where things get surprising. In this quest for purpose, the inner life matters just as much as what's going on the outside. And this unexpected twist about finding your calling is found in your pain. Askinosie quotes poet Khalil Gibran when he wrote, "Your joy is your sorrow unmasked." This may be an unfamiliar concept, and it was to me. Life, as most of us know, can be sorrowful. To Shawn, he was deeply affected by the death of his father, and in his father's death, he found a way to heal through his service to others. Whatever your deepest sorrow is, a dream that didn't work out, the death of a close family member or someone close to you, by entering into that sorrow through service to others, it may be a way to connect with your greater purpose in life. After you identify your sorrow, you now know where your service should be directed. Askinosie reminds us it's not all about writing a check. Serving others is about being connected to needs that relate to your sadness. For him, it was volunteering with a hospital's palliative care unit. Like hospice, they care for dying patients in hospitals. It's counterintuitive, but it's where Shawn found joy. He wrote, "For the first time in my life, I found joy transformed from my greatest sorrow, and I also found my true self." So after you identify your sorrow and serve in a way to connect to your sorrow, you may find out who you really are. And it's in this selfless service that, ironically, you discover who you are, and this is what will connect to what you should do in your life, according to Askinosie. And once you do, you can pursue something that aligns with your identity, or as one author puts it, do what you are. Before we get to the 2 final steps, if you're getting any value from this calling-driven overview of Shawn Askinosie's meaningful work, I would love it if you could smash that like button. You can also click it. That helps more people find this video so they too can do what they were made to do. And it's a small way to support this channel. So like the video and let's keep going. The next step is intricately tied to the previous step, serve selflessly. In fact, you could say it's the anticipation, or lack thereof, of the previous step. Expect nothing in return. When you serve selflessly in a way that connects to your sorrow, don't expect an immediate return. That may be challenging, as it was for Shawn as well. He wrote on page 18 and 19, "It's good to dwell in this step and do the work without expectation of anything at all. After a few weeks, it's okay to have expectations, but suspending expectations for even a few seconds will be tough." My technique was to take a few minutes before visiting patients to go to the hospital chapel to center myself. This practice within the context of service shouldn't be surprising. Askinosie quotes a few teachers, including Jesus, who said, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me." It is in this act of dying to ourselves, removing personal expectation from the service, that we somehow find a path. It was this final step where Askinosie found what he was going to do next. It was something completely unrelated to his law practice. Shawn found ways to unwind from his current work. You've already heard about one of them, the serving in the palliative care ward at the hospital, but there were others, like personal retreats to the Assumption Abbey in Ava, Missouri, exploring his passion in grilling and cooking, or prayer. Askinosie tucks away another tidbit of wisdom on page 10. He wrote, "Once I had accepted that I needed to leave law, I prayed a very simple prayer. Dear God, give me something else to do. I prayed it every day, usually repeating it throughout the day. I had no idea just how long I would pray that prayer. It turned out to be 5 years. This is actually something I had in common with Shawn. I prayed a similar prayer, but not nearly as long as he did. Whatever he eventually discovered, Shawn didn't find it without help. He would tell you, God helped him. It was after employing these different ways to disconnect from his regular responsibilities of work and home that he discovered a new kind of work in chocolate. Here's Shawn again from that same TED Talk.
I eventually left a perfectly successful career and took the next natural step. I started one of the first bean-to-bar chocolate factories in the U.S. over a decade ago. It's a small family business that I run with my daughter and 17 employees. We direct trade with cocoa farmers on 3 continents, share profits with them, and open our books to them. This month, I'll take my 42nd origin trip to meet with cocoa farmers in the Amazon. We engage with local students in our business, and we take high school students to Tanzania. I eat chocolate every day, and nobody has threatened to kill me yet. My story is your story, the beginning of one thing and the ending of another.
Shawn's unexpected steps to discovering his personal calling are really other-centered. It was an indirect path. He didn't discover his next role as a chocolatier by researching chocolate companies. He found it by serving dying patients in a hospital. But should we be surprised at this? Jesus said, "Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it." What about you? Are you wondering what to do with the life God gave to you? I put together a playlist and some videos if you're trying to figure out what to do with your life, so go ahead and click on that playlist and I'll see you over there. All the best.